All right, we'll have a slight delay probably in the streaming. Let me know if there is sufficient delay. I'll be anyways hearing the feed as well. All the doubts that you have, you can send it via the chat, and whatever doubts are there and we can cover in short time, I will finish it off, and the other ones we can of course do a offline call, or maybe we can do a separate session as well. No, Vishal, the session has not started. It will start in another 2 or 3 minutes. We're just waiting for people to join in so that we don't want people to. I will just remove this and just be back, guys. Just give me a minute. I hope all of us can see. I am thinking all this is clear, and we will be starting in another 1 more minute. Yes, we look at venture capital investment. Diptarka, right? I'm sorry if I got your name wrong. Venture capital funds, what does it mean and how does it involve in a company and with respect to startups? We will discuss that in detail. We'll finish off the budget part first, and let's start from there. All right, so I'm thinking we'll just start off because we don't want to delay with people who have not joined yet. Right, guys, my name is Bibin George Burgess. I'm a faculty for economics and I teach a bit of legal reasoning. A couple of sessions on constitution also I take for the civil service students as well as the ones for LST, that is a law school tutorial. I've been associated with Ajay for the past, I think, 5 years now. And I generally do a PDP session, an 8-hour session on Indian economy and finance. But in interest of not being able to be there, I thought we'd do a quick session on the budget because a couple of students were not able to answer the questions that were asked. Right, so we will look at the facets of what is important for us in the budget. I'll also explain to you what specifically happens in a particular budget, and then I'll go into the budget of this year, right? So don't worry, there's nothing very boring and long that we have. All right, so good evening, guys. The interim budget for 2019. So what does the budget mean? It is an account of what the government chooses to spend and what it says it will earn in the following year, right? And what it specifically an interim budget means is that it's a temporary budget. It is just replacing the budget which is there for the time being, and in effect there will be another budget if there is another government, or the government that is currently there will then go on to elaborate the same budget if they get re-elected, right? So this interim budget is mainly looking at getting enough government spends for the next 2-3 months till the elections happen. Alright, so the question that you have was what is the different names given to this budget. This has been called as the mother of all 10 particular fields or 10 particular portfolios or 10 particular places in which the government wants to spend its money, right? It cannot get the approval of the parliament, which it requires, in a duration of 1 or 2 months. It goes on to be discussed for a very long time, right? And what is this session called? The session where the budget is presented starting from the 1st of February is called as the budget session. Now, in this budget session, the finance minister or whoever is the acting finance minister in this case, if you saw the picture that I showed you in the first in a particular budget, now, when September of the previous year, let's say 2019 budget has to be presented, in 2018 September, the government asks the different states and the different ministries to tell it how much money would it require for the next year. So the government will now tell each of the ministries, let's say the railway minister, the defense minister, the home minister, the minister of education, which is your HRD, the Ministry of Textiles, Commerce, each minister will be asked, how much money do you think you will be spending in your particular division or your portfolio in the next 1 year? So then each of these ministries work back and then checked and verified. Once this is done, this is then moved to the finance minister for vetting this particular budget, right? I have to see what exactly is happening. How do I know that Smriti Irani is spending extra money? How do I know that Modi wants to spend a particular money in this particular thing? So they have to make a list of the things that they want to spend the money on. So once this is done, this is compiled together, and once everything is compiled together, before the printing of the final budget, there is something called as a halwa ceremony, where the finance minister offers halwa to all the employees and everybody in the parliament, all these people. And why do they want these people not to talk to anybody in the week before the budget releases? Yes, Vishal, it is called a halwa ceremony where the finance minister gives halwa to all the people who are actually involved in presenting the or preparing the budget. Absolutely, Ashwin, absolutely lucky and correct. It influences investments. A lot of people, if they know where the budget is going to be allocated, they will all shift their focus in their investments. The stock market, where people invest into companies, now that people get to know something inside information about the budget, what will they do? They will always go and invest more into that kind of area because they know that the budget, when it is announced, the allocation of money into that industry might increase, therefore the company might grow and therefore I will become rich. So what happens is a few people will get the information and the other people will not. Therefore, the budget is kept a secret till the day of its presentation, that is the 1st of February. Employment, education, healthcare, defense, what has been India's total expenditure, what has been India's total gain, what has happened in that particular sector, how many schemes of the government has actually worked, what is not working, what areas need improvement. All this is being presented by the Chief Economic Advisor. Now this gets presented annually. Now following which on the 1st of February, which has been changed since 2017, on the 1st of February, the finance minister or the acting finance minister will now present the budget speech in the parliament, in the Lok Sabha. Now please understand, and I want you to pay attention to me very clearly, guys. The budget is a money bill. A money bill is, according to Article 110, a bill which has something to do with money or taxes, right? The money bill specifically has to be introduced in the Lok Sabha and it is voted and discussed only in the Lok Sabha. The money bill can be pushed or given to the Rajya Sabha. They can discuss and they can share their views, but there cannot be any voting on it. And if the budget or any money bill for that matter doesn't get accepted by the Rajya Sabha in 14 days, it is deemed as passed. right? So once this is done, now what happens is that the finance minister goes in and reads out the budget, which is called the presentation of the budget, and then he will say that I have a couple of things which are very, very important, right, which I will discuss in detail. But the remaining part of which, when I'm discussing the budget, I also need the money to run the country, because the budget might take so much time to pass, because people like Rahul Gandhi sits in the parliament, and I have no offense for him, but to make him or other kind of MPs who have very little knowledge of finance understand what exactly is happening, you will really have to spend some time, right? So in such a case, what happens, the government tells that please give me some money to conduct the expenses, and in the meanwhile we will discuss and then continue with the other expenditures after we have discussed in detail. So what amount of money is given? 20% of the budget money is given to the government, saying, okay, you take and spend this, and we will audit this after the spending is done, because we don't have time till then. We don't have 3 months to wait till you actually discuss the budget. So this 20% money, which is given directly without discussing, is called as vote on account. So I am saying I will vote on account of this money, but I will not delay the budget process. I will not delay the reimbursement or disbursement process, because if not, the country will suffer. Right? Now, having said this, the remaining part of the budget will be discussed in detail and voted on important things. So the small things which are not required, the government will just tap their hands and agree to this. And please remember, if it's important things like the defense, then it is discussed and debated, and maybe sometimes what happens is they may reduce the amount of money that has been allocated if they think it is too much, or increase the amount of money allocated if they think it is too less. Right? And having said this, okay, now the interesting part is, what do you think will be there in the budget? Guys, I'm sure you have not known this, but this is what is actually presented in the budget. And please listen to me very carefully. The actual spend of 2017-2018 will now be presented in this year's budget. Why? Because last year when they were presenting the budget, 2017-18 financial year was not over. They were still sitting in February. So that February and March, what happened, nobody exactly knows. So the whole thing is revised, and the actual spends of 2017-2018 will be shown. Right? Besides this, the next thing is that they will show the revised estimate for February and March of 2019. So last year's budget, when they were discussing, they would have given an amount, let's say 10,000 rupees for the year 2018-19. What if the amount already got spent by January 2019? Then for the remaining 2 months, they will require more money. So what will the finance minister do? He will have a revised estimate for these 2 months, saying, you know what, for these 2 months, I want some more money. Right? And this is a part of the previous budget itself. But he will present it in this year. What is the next thing that is presented? The next thing is what you have commonly known, the budget for the financial year of April 2019 to March 2020. Right? So are we clear with this, guys? So can we quickly write on the chat what will be presented in next year's budget? So next year's budget, can we quickly write on the chat the 3 things that will be presented according to this? What will be presented in next year's budget? Go for it, guys. Take a try. If it's wrong also, it's okay. We will discuss and we will understand this. Yes, Priyanka, absolutely right. Spends of 2018-19, correct? No, Atitya, not actual spends of 1920. It will be actual spend of 18-19. Revised estimate of February and March. Atitya, again, absolutely correct. And estimate for 2021. Anantaraman, thank you so much. That's brilliant there. Actual spends of 18-19. Revised estimate for Feb and March of 2020. And budget for 2020-21. Brilliant, guys. Brilliant, brilliant. That's exactly what it is. So we have got it. So this is what the budget is going to be. So let's go to the next slide quickly. And how does this happen? I already told this to you guys. The budget is prepared through a calculative process between the finance minister and the finance ministry and the spending ministries. I will just make it a little bigger so that we can see this, and help me know if we can see this. The finance ministry issues guidelines or communicating instructions to the spending ministries, while spending ministries can plan, right? What happens then? The budget circular is issued in the month of September during the budget cycle and marks the beginning of the budget process. What will you do? Ministries and departments will then provide revised estimates and the budget estimates. The finance minister and the other officials will participate in the halwa ceremony, like I told you, which marks the process of printing document for the budget. The next thing, now how does it happen? Now before the presentation of the budget, like I told you, the president's recommendation is required. Why? Because it is a money bill. I told you guys, please remember, in the constitution, article 110 talks about money bill and article 112 talks about the budget. The budget is not a word mentioned in the constitution. In the constitution, it's called as annual financial statement. Please remember. Now, after the president's recommendation is done, the budget is laid before the Lok Sabha by the finance minister with the budget speech. It is not discussed, it is just presented. Right? Now, please remember, because it is a money bill, the introduction of the bill cannot be opposed. Please remember, it's the most basic thing, the budget. If that cannot be passed by the government in the parliament, then the next thing that happens is the opposition will call a no confidence motion. Because such a basic thing as money, if it cannot be trusted with the government, then the government should resign. No, Shruti, there's nothing behind the halwa ceremony. It's just a procedure that they carry that marks the end of curation of the budget, and then it goes for printing. That means no changes can be done once it is over. So it marks the end of the preparation of the budget and the beginning of the printing of the budget, right? Now remember again, guys, I told you the budget is called as the annual financial statement in the constitution, article 112. Now the budget is a money bill. A money bill is discussed in article 110. We are clear with this? Right? So like I told you guys, after the dish is served, a large number of officials and support staff who are directly associated with the budget making are required to stay in the ministry and remain cut off from their families. The entire budget making process commences months ago when the finance ministry seeks estimate from various ministries. Right? So that is the only important thing that you have to remember as to how the process happens. It is just good enough for you to know this because of course what you're looking at is actually the budget of this year. But it is nice to know what actually happens so that you have a context around it. Ilakin, if someone leaks the budget somehow, obviously it will be known, and once it is known, there will be a revised budget that is made. Because once the budget is deemed as leaked, it is a crime and it has to be sorted out. But in the meanwhile, to give due advantage to everyone, the budget has to be re-prepared. Now, we will look at the highlights of this year's budget called as the interim budget. Why is it called the interim budget, guys? Because it will run only till the election time, right? Once the election is over, the government will extend this budget to include more schemes, and that will happen only once the voting is over and the new parliament is brought into place. Now, if there is a new government that comes in place, they will reject most of these things and they might redo this to give another budget. But if the existing government comes, they will add on to this existing budget saying that we have done this, so this is what we are trying to do. And this is mainly called the election budget because a lot of the things that they have mentioned in the budget happens to be to influence all sorts of voters, especially the middle class people and the salaried class who keep on crying that the government is robbing them. Right? We keep on saying we wish that the government did not take this money. I've been robbed by the government. Nothing is happening in India. So therefore the government said, okay, let me do something for you now that it is election time. So now, first thing to remember is standard deduction. Standard deduction for salaried taxpayers has been raised from 40,000 to 50,000. So if my salary is 5 lakh rupees, earlier you had to submit medical bills and travel bills and you would get it reimbursed as standard deduction and only the remaining amount would be taxable. Now the government is saying, dude, you know what? I don't want to see your medical bills or whatever, but I'm going to give you a standard deduction of 50,000 rupees which will include all these things. So which means 5 lakhs minus 50,000, you have to, now your taxable income is 4 lakhs 50,000. Yes, Shruti, if the government wants, they can still go back on the proposals or they can amend the proposals as they want because it is the parliament, they are the legislative body. The legislative body can always keep on amending and changing laws, yes or no? And that's why your demonetization happened just like that and your GST happened just like that. As long as they have majority in the parliament, they can amend whatever rules that they want to. So what I'm saying here back again is, guys, at the net effect, the highest amount of taxation that can be saved is about rupees 3,588. Now, how am I coming to this amount is basically 35.88 into 10,000 rupees, right? From 40,000 to 50,000, if I increase the standard deduction, for the extra 10,000 also, you don't have to pay tax. And this 35.88 is actually a what do you say? It is a average of all the slabs of tax. If I include people from 5 to 10 lakhs, 10 to 20 lakhs and above 30 lakhs, on average, you will get about 35.88% relief from currently what is there, right? So the 10,000 rupees that has already been there, the highest that somebody can make in terms of saving is 3,588 rupees in a year. So while it sounds really nice, the normal taxpayer does not get so much of a benefit. But for the employers, it will be nice because they don't have to now process all your fake medical bills that you all guys create, all your fake travel bills that you guys make, all the reimbursements. So they don't have to do all that because the government is saying, whatever you submit, I have a standard deduction of 50,000 and I'll give you only so much tax elevation. Now, the next thing is, if you're a resident taxpayer earning taxable income, right, after all the applicable deductions, for example, after your standard deduction, if your salary amount is up to 5 lakhs, you will get full tax rebate. Earlier, the tax liability was up to 13,000 rupees inclusive of health and education cess, right? So, right now the government is saying you will be given that additional rebate of 13,000. But please remember, even then you have to file your tax. It is not that, okay, I don't come under the taxable bracket, therefore I don't have to file, right? Yes, this is TDS. TDS is simply tax deduction at source. Because the government does not trust you guys and thinks that you will cheat the government says that I will first take tax from you, and if there is anything extra that I have taken, I will give it back to you when you file returns. But I will still take it from you now because I'm not sure that if I let you pay the exact amount, you might fool me and you might not pay the exact amount. Now the next thing is that if your gross income is up to rupees 6.5 lakhs, you may not be required to pay any tax if you make investments in provident fund, specific savings, insurance, etc., which are eligible for deduction under ATC. Remember your ATC which you keep on trying to invest into and waste your money? The ATC gives you that 1.5 lakhs ka rebate, right? So if you invest 1.5 lakhs, that becomes tax free. So you may not be able to pay tax if you have salary 6.5, but provided in a year you have to show investment up to 1.5 lakhs. Because why? What happens? 6.5 minus 1.5 will again bring you back to the 5 lakhs ka bracket after all your standard deductions. That is the first thing, guys. Please understand what your standard deduction means, what it means about the 5 lakh rupees, and what it means in terms of ATC. Are we clear with all this? Can we go to the next point? Give me a yes, guys. If you have doubts, please ask me, or else we will go to the next point. Okay, Arvind, we'll just quickly look at the 13K part. So please remember that earlier what happened is you got tax liability not for 5 lakhs, right? What is the tax liability? How much do you guys file your taxes at? What is the set of people when we file our taxes? We normally have a taxable income. What is it for men? How much is it for women? How much is it? You have a 2.5 lakhs and 3 lakhs is what it is. 2.5 lakhs has been given for men and 3 lakhs for women. But ideally what's going to happen is the remaining people have to now pay extra tax of 5%. Right? And then after the 5% bracket, 5 to 10 lakhs have to pay 20%. So what happens is that above 2.5 lakhs to 5 lakhs, whatever tax you had to pay, that you will get as a rebate, right? Which means that it is not that you don't have to file and you're completely exempt from it. They are saying that you still have to file your taxes, but the 13,000 rupees extra that would have gone from you, that is from the bracket of 2.5 to 5, that part per year will be given back to you. That means you will get rebate for it. The marginal tax rate is very simple now. What does it mean? For every margin, what is the change in tax that happens? Which means from 2.5 or 3 for women, when I move to 5, if I have not made the ATC investments, I will be charged tax at 5%. Now from 5 to 10 lakhs, what is going to happen? I have to pay a tax of 20%. Right? And 5 to 10, I think 5 to 20, and then above 30 lakhs, I have a separate charge that I have to pay. Above 10 lakhs, you have to pay 30%. Sorry, that's my bad. Right? So when I have these sort of tax margins, correct. So you will have to file returns. Exactly. So you have to still file your tax submissions and then it will come back to you because it's a rebate given to you. That means the government it's like how your gas cylinders work. How does the direct subsidy work? The direct subsidy says that you pay the full amount of the gas cylinder, and what I will eventually do is I will transfer the money back to you. Right? Are we clear with this now, guys? All right. Okay, in interest of time, Abbas, I will discuss the standard deduction with you one more time quickly. It means that extra 10,000 rupees, that means 50,000 rupees, the government will now give you standard deduction. So if your salary is 7.5 lakhs, the government will take out 50,000, assuming that you had some sort of an expense in terms of medical bills or whatever, and the remaining 7 lakhs will now come under the taxable bracket, right? So what will happen now? Your salary up to 2.5 is exempt from taxes, 1.5 is exempt from taxes if you invest it, and the remaining will now become taxable. Now the next thing is, when you have 2 houses and one house is not occupied, the government assumes that you have a tenant staying there and you're getting some rent from them. So on the basis of that, the government will now put a tax on the basis of an average rental amount that is there in that area. What the government has done in this budget is that they told that no notional rental income will be added to the taxable income for the second house property owned that is not let out. See, if you're letting out your houses to people, then obviously whatever rent you are earning, the government will put a tax if it crosses a particular limit. But it's saying that, let's say you have two houses and you have a second house which is not being let out. I will not assume that you have got rent from there and charge you tax. Earlier the government was doing that. Now what does this mean? It means that you can own up to two houses without notional rent on the second property being added to the taxable on the taxable income, right? So there is no notion that a rent, he must be getting a rent. What if he's getting a rent? Doesn't matter. The government saying, I don't care anymore. Are we clear with this, guys? What do you mean by notional rental agreement? Rental income? So all your house owners and landlords, they're going to get richer now. Because before they had to pay taxes only, even if they did not, if they had multiple houses and even if they did not have a person staying. But now what's going to happen is they have to pay taxes only for the money which the rent is being collected, and that too if it crosses a particular amount, right? Arvind, I did not get your question. Can a person then game in this case? I didn't understand. Saying not let, see, you can do all these things till someone finds out, and then you know what will happen, right? The income tax will tear you into pieces. This is exactly what happened when the rich people were not paying taxes. The government told them, bete tax pay kar lo, and then the government said that, I'll just ask you for 45%, please pay. Then you did not listen. You did not keep on listening, and then what did the government do? The government shoved down a demonetization down your throat and finished. All the rich people got screwed. Whatever little money they had to burn it down, and then they had to go back and give it into the bank. And then I'm sure the demonetization was not the best plan that the government did, but it caused some amount of damage here and there for people who are stacking cash. Yeah, Abbas, in a country like ours with around 130 million people, we can always flout taxes. You just have to be smart. And Indians are smart, right? That's why we do the IT jobs, not only because the amount of money given to us is less. It's also because we are smart and we take risks. And we will take any risk to avoid paying taxes. Right? So let's come back, guys. Quickly, have you understood how you're going to be affected and how things are going to be? All right. So for rural India, what is going to happen? The budget showers rupees 6,000 per year on each of the 120 million small farm owners. Meaning if you own less than 2 hectares of land, then I will give you 6,000 rupees per year because you are not able to make any sort of farming produce and you're not able to earn any money, right? Because a lot of Indian farmers are not the ones who have a lot of farmland, right? They are all tenants and not tenants, sorry, they are generally taking this farm on lease basis and then working in it, which is why the government said that I'll give you 6,000 rupees. But the important thing to understand is they will not give 6,000 rupees in one shot. They will first give 2,000 rupees in this 3 months and they will give the remaining 4,000 in 2 more sets, right? So they want to know what is happening with this. And this is called as Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, right? Kisan Samman Nidhi, and it's called PM Kisan. Now the problem is, this is a very, very small amount because Telangana government by itself is giving, a lot of state governments itself is giving such amount of money. For example, 8,000 rupees per acre is given by Telangana government to the farmers. Odisha, the Kalia scheme it's called, is giving 10,000 to 12,000 rupees to farm owners also and to tenants, sharecroppers and landless workers, right? So all this amount of money is being given. The only good thing is that what the central government is giving is in addition to what the state government is giving. They're not saying that I will remove what the state government is giving and only give you the 6,000. It's in addition to it. That means it is good. But if you look at the overall amount, 1 year, if you give me 6,000 rupees, what can happen, right? For us, most of us, 1 week may we spend 6,000 rupees. For some of us, even 1 week going to a club or a bar, we spend 6,000 bucks. So 3000 rupees is not how it is done. It is 6000 rupees given in installments of 3 sets. Each one will be 2000 rupees. Right? It's given very clearly. The next important thing is the limit on TDS of annual interest income from bank and post office deposits. For example, if you deposit your money in the bank, let's say like an FD or a post office saving, right? What happens is the limit for TDS. Earlier, if you have anything more than 10,000 as interest, if you're earning more than 10,000 as interest, what will happen is the government will now charge you tax on the remaining amount, right? Now, what has happened is that from 10,000 to 40,000, they have given you the exemption. That means now only if your interest that you earn from your FD or whatever, if it crosses 40,000, only then you will have to pay tax. Right? And on house rent also, earlier it was 1.8 lakhs, beyond which you will have to pay tax. Now your house owners are even lucky because only after 2.4 you will be charged any sort of tax. So please remember this, for FD and post office savings, 10k to 40k has been increased, right? So only after 40k will you have to pay tax. For house rent, your house owners only from 1.8 lakhs to 2.4 lakhs, they have got a exempt, which means only after 2.4 lakhs will they be required to file their taxes. Pujita, TDS is tax deduction at source, meaning tax is deducted in the beginning. That not that the government asks you to file the tax right after the year is over. As and when they're giving you the money itself, they will deduct the tax and give it. And if the government feels that they have taken more money for you, they give you an option to file returns, which means you can file saying that I want this much money in return. That happens by July, August of the next financial year. $2.4 lakh is an annual income from house rent, not annual income of the owner. The owner can have whatsoever income that he wants to from house rent. If he is getting more than 2.4, then it will be taxed. Generally, the percentage of taxation on rent income and FD and all is 10%. So 10% is a standard TDS, unless if it is your standard income tax. Unless you're a salaried employee, it becomes the different slabs. Otherwise, it is a standard 10%. So let's go to the next slide, guys, quickly. What else is cooking this year? The finance minister has announced 2% interest subvention to farmers who are pursuing the activities of animal husbandry and fisheries. Why the government wants to have more people invest into animal husbandry and fisheries? Because animal rearing and fisheries is going down, declining. So the government is giving you 2% interest subvention. What does interest subvention mean? It means that if you have 10% as the interest you have to pay for a loan that you took from the government will pay 2% and the remaining 8% only you have to pay. Right, so Shivam, please understand your salaried income and this income that you're getting from the house rent is separate, if I'm not wrong, because your salaried income is what is 6.5 and that goes under different slabs. So what you're having as a self-employed person, if you're, for example, when I'm a faculty with Ajay, when Ajay pays me $1,000, the government will take 10% from it as $100. So Ajay will in net effect have to pay me 900 rupees, right? So please understand that is because I am doing a self-employment or it is not under the ambit of salaried employees, right? Pujita, yes, subvention basically means it will not lower. The government will pay that 2%. Of course, in net effect, for the farmer, it is lowering, but the government is paying that 2% for you, just like a subsidy. Now look at the next thing, guys. in case of timely repayment of loans. So now what does the government want to do? One, they want to promote animal husbandry and fisheries. And the second thing is they're saying that if you pay the loan in time, then I will give you additional 3% interest subvention, which means that if my loan is timely paid, from 10% it will go to 8, and from 8 it will go to 5. So in net effect, a farmer who does his loan payment properly has to pay only 5% interest. Correct, it goes under the government expenditure, not the government deficit. Deficit is a separate thing. We will discuss that. It goes under the government expenditure. So it goes under what you call as a revenue expenditure. We will discuss all these things in the following slides. Don't worry. See, lowering the interest is the net effect of it. But the thing is, if I tell you I'm lowering the interest, how does it matter? You'll be like, Acha, the interest must be only so much. But when I feel like the government is paying for it, it means that the interest still does not reduce, because the banks who are giving the loans, or there's a particular percentage that they maintain, right? Guys, for this we have to understand in detail how banks come up with this percentage of loans, or when they have calculated the interest for you, how much do they charge, right? So the percentage of interest cannot be just lowered just like that. It has to be paid by someone, because banks charge interest based on a particular calculation. Abhinav, yes, this is for farmers who are specifically in the activities of animal husbandry and fisheries. Now the next thing, guys, this might be important for you to understand. It might be a good question that they can ask you also. There is 25% additional seats in educational institutions to meet the 10% reservation for poor. So what they have done is, they are saying, I will not give the existing seats in 10% reservation. Rather, I'll create 25% more additional seats. From that 10% of the total that is there, I will reserve for the poor. This is for the loan interest. So please understand, we don't pay only the interest in time. It is a combination of the interest and the principal. I'm sure you learned compound interest for your CAT preparation, right? So the final amount that is to be paid, when you pay the time, final amount is divided into different payments, right? So every time you make a timely payment, net effect, what will happen is like a cashback, what happens on a no cost EMI, the government will lower the net effect of the interest as 2% less and eventually 3% less. So Anantharaman, please understand, we just discussed the budget. So the moment the government discusses it in the parliament and they pass the budget, that by the end of the budget session, they'll pass this budget. So it will happen somewhere in the year, maybe by June, July, once the elections get over. So all these things, they will not take it on top priority and do it, right? Please understand. Can any of you tell me what exactly is the agenda of every government? Every government in the world has only one agenda, guys, to stay and remain in power. You might say it is to make money. You might say that no, they want to do, only thing they want to do is stay in power. Please understand, guys, even having money doesn't matter. That's why all your rich guys become MPs. The actual power is in the power to make laws and be in the parliament. So everybody will always tell you schemes which will increase the number of people who vote for them, right? Now, caste-based reservation, I don't know if it is there. They have not mentioned it, but they said that 10% reservation will be for the poor, and that will be after they increase the number of seats by 25%. Absolutely, Abhinav, good name that you have given. It's a perfect bait for elections. This budget is a perfect bait for elections, right? But they've just touched every part. They have not specifically put their money into corporates because they understand that the corporates are always with them. For example, for whatever reason that you might think, Ambani will anyways vote for whoever he likes to vote for. He's not going to change based on one budget because he has long-term goals with the government. Who does the government want to vote? They want the middle class and the upper middle class people like us who do not vote to go out there and start voting, right? So what will they do? They will start giving you or introducing or announcing schemes which will affect or benefit the normal middle class people. And this is the truth. This is a very, very open truth. Now, also remember, for the first time, the defense budget is going to cross 3 lakh crores, right? For the first time, it's always the highest budget, always highest allocation in this defense, right? For example, the US defense budget itself is 3 times the budget of India in itself, right? So, what is the total amount of budget required for India, or whatever is presented by the finance minister? Multiply it into 3. That is the amount of defense budget that USA spends. Now you know why they go crazy, right? Now the next thing is the allocation for Northeast has increased by 21% to rupees 58,000 crores in financially 2020. Right? So now these things, the allocation that is there in the Northeast and all, we will get to see it only if this government comes into power. This will not be the first focus that the government has. The next thing is railways will get a capital support of rupees. So capital support means what, guys? Capital expenditure and capital receipt. Capital basically means anything I spend or get out of fixed assets. For example, if I have bought let's say a flat, and then I get rent from it. So when I buy the flat, the money I spend to buy the flat is called as a capital expenditure. Why? Because the capital expenditure is this money that I've spent is helping me buy assets. Now from that flat, if I get rent from a fixed asset without doing any work, just by owning that flat, if I get rent, it means that what happens? I am getting money from something I did not work for. So it's called as a capital receipt, right? So capital expenditure is when you spend money to buy assets, and capital receipt is when you get money from some asset that you own. Are we clear with this, guys? Let me know if we have a doubt in this, and then we will move on to the next one. Right, so let's understand this, guys. I have all of us understood. Let's quickly just go to the next one. Important things also, like I told you, is the finance minister, interim finance minister Piyush Goyal has mentioned Startup India, but no relief has been given from the pervasive angel tax, which means if you get an angel fund from someone, you will not be getting any sort of rebate on the amount received, because let's say you get an angel investment from someone, there's a tax that you have to pay on that also, right? But there's no relief from that. So startups who are always anyway struggling will still have to pay the tax. Right? So having said that, India's fiscal deficit this year would be 3.4% of the gross domestic product. Right? So please understand fiscal deficit. I'll explain to you in the next slide. So the gross domestic product means the value of the goods and services that are made in India. Right? So whatever we buy and sell in India, the net effect of that is a gross domestic product. And what has happened is we always calculate the fiscal deficit as a percentage of the GDP. And we targeted 3, we were not able to reach 3, then we said it is 3.3, not able to reach that also. Now the government is saying that it will be 3.4. Diptarka, angel investment means, let's say you're starting a company and I am an investor who comes and puts money into your company. Let's say you're a Flipkart or a Walmart or a Swiggy or a Cult Fit. What happens is the investors come and put in their money. And because it's a startup and investors are giving you money, it is called as an angel investment. Like someone is being an angel and giving you money. Now the angel tax will be what? It will be tax on this particular angel investment. Correct. Anantaraman, 3.4% of the GDP is a ceiling for the fiscal deficit. Correct. That's what they're trying to say, that I will not go beyond 3.4. So you never know, guys. These people keep on saying this, but they somehow always breach the fiscal deficit. Right? Fiscal deficit, I will explain to you very clearly in the next slide, which I think is also the last or second last slide. So we are almost at the end. Now the next important thing is also 2% interest subsidy for MSMEs. So MSME is micro, small and medium enterprises. So for every incremental loan of 1 crore, provided you are a GST registered entity, you get a 2% interest subsidy. So this is all given to people so that people stick to the GST registration and they go by the actual GST taxpayer payment and does not try to fake or avoid all these kinds of bills. Right, so we will talk about venture capitalists and angel investors a little shortly. Let's go to the next slide. We'll just finish off the budget part. Just give me about 10 more minutes, guys. Are we clear on this slide? Can we move to the next slide, please? Are we clear? An MSME is micro, small and medium enterprises. You see all these small khadi investors, these khadi shops, these handloom shops. You see small shops or let's say all these industries which make all those wooden toys, handicrafts, right? Some sort of spices, some sort of masala, some sort of hats specific to them, the same one. Right? So what happens is the government gives them some sort of funds to start their own business, just like an angel fund. Right? So the government is saying that every additional incremental loan of 1 crore that I give you, I'll give you a 2% interest subsidy. That means for 1 crore, let's say I have to pay 10,000 rupees as tax. I will give you, 10,000 rupees as interest. I will give you a 2% interest subsidy. That means instead of paying 10,000, you can pay me somewhere around 8,800. Right? Why? This is only not 8,800, I think I got the number wrong, 9,800. About 2% is what I will cut off from this one for every additional 1 crore, only if you are a GST registered entity. Okay guys, this is the best slide to make you understand some hardcore numbers. This will be useful for your finance also. Stay with me guys, I will teach you very clearly what is happening. Don't log off right now. Listen very carefully. And this is almost the second last slide. Okay. I think we are, yeah, that's the last slide, guys. So this is the last slide which will help you understand what we're talking about. Let's do it. Okay. Listen very carefully. I'm going to explain it to you in terms of a girlfriend and a boyfriend. Okay. I'm going to explain capital, expenditure and receipts, and revenue, receipts and expenditure, like I told you, as to how a boyfriend and a girlfriend would be. Now listen, let me assume that Tarun has a girlfriend. Now Tarun buys his girlfriend a watch, right? Now what has Tarun done? He has bought something very tangible. It's a tangible asset. Now what happens? He has made a capital expenditure. Right? So now what happens is Tarun's girlfriend rents out this watch to her friends when they want to go for parties, and because of that she is earning money. So now what is going to happen is that the money she earns from giving this watch on rent is called as capital receipt, because she gave the asset and she got the money. She's not doing any work. Are we clear? Right? Now, let me give you a second example. The second example is, let's say Tarun takes his girlfriend out for a dinner. What happened? Both of them had a great dinner, great experience, everything is fine. That did not create any tangible asset, which is why it is just a good experience that they had, and therefore it is an intangible asset, and therefore it is called as a revenue expenditure. Right? Are we able to understand? Now, Tarun, because he's spending so much for his girlfriend, has to work hard and earn salary. But Tarun will get salary only for the number of hours he's working, right? It's not that Tarun, if he sits simply in office or simply at home, he will get salary. So, since the salary is dependent on the work that he does, it is called as a revenue receipt. That means he is getting a revenue because he's doing the work. More number of days he works, more salary. If he doesn't do work, no salary. Correct? So money that comes in from an asset without me doing anything. It could be a flat, it could be a car, it could be Tarun's girlfriend's watch, right? It is called as capital receipt. The money I spend to buy such assets like a house, a car or Tarun's girlfriend's watch is now called as what? Capital expenditure. Now revenue receipts is something that you get as you work for it. For example, if I do some activity and then I get some money out of it, it's then called as revenue receipts. And that means that if I don't do anything, I will not get so. Right? And next, revenue expenditure is very simple. I spend money. I spend money on a good drink. I spend money on a good experience. I went bungee jumping. I spent 5,000 bucks, right? I didn't create any asset, because of which it's called a revenue expenditure. Capital expenditure, Saurav, is when you buy a flat and spend money. So what have you done? You have paid money and you've created an asset. That house will remain with you even if you do not go to work also tomorrow. So it's a capital expenditure. Right? Now please look at this, guys. Look at the screen that I'm showing you. Look at it very carefully. We're going to go one after the other. So revenue receipts, let's say these are all in crores. So revenue receipts, let's say in India, for example, is 3.5 lakh crores. Okay, revenue receipts means India worked for something, India got it from somewhere after doing some sort of activity, and that's how is good. Let's assume that. Next is capital receipts. Now capital receipts, how can you get? You can get it by loan recoveries. Let's say you have given money to someone, or someone is supposed to give you rent for your particular flat or whatever. So loan recoveries or other receipts, let's say there is 1,63,144. So in my capital receipts of total 1,63,144, loan recoveries and all together, I got 12,000. Now what I borrow from somebody else, right? Capital receipts, I can get capital receipts also by borrowing money from someone else. Someone else has got house rent, I am borrowing it from him. The money is still capital to someone else is giving me the money, or I am getting rent from someone but I am collecting the rent in advance, for example. That will become what? It will become a borrowing or a liability, because though I have taken the money from him, it is not my money, I have to give it back to him. So the money which you actually need to get from your flat becomes your 12,000. Let's take the same example. And the money that you collected in advance from your person, as in a security deposit that you collect, that amount now is also your capital receipt, because you got it because of your flat. But that money you have to give it back, so it's a liability actually. You don't own that money, correct? So the first one is not a debt. 12,000 is yours. But the 1,50,000 is like your security deposit. You don't own that money. You took it from your tenant, but you have to give it back to him in the end. So that totally becomes 1,63,144. Now total receipt is how much? Total receipt will be revenue receipt plus capital receipt. Right? Total receipts will be revenue receipts plus capital receipts, which is 5,14,344. Now let's go to expenditure now. Revenue expenditure. You spent on certain experiences, you have spent 1,14,982. Capital expenditure. You spent 67,832 to buy some house, let's say, for that matter. Now total expenditure is how much? 5,14,344. Yes, Diptarka, correct. Though it is a income for them, it is not what they own. It's a liability. It's like taking a loan from a bank. It's not your money. Though it has come to you and you can spend it, eventually you will have to give it back to someone. So if you look at this budget deficit, now you listen to what budget deficit is. Budget deficit means total cap expenditure minus total receipts. Total expenditure minus total receipt. If you look at that amount, it is 0 because the same amount. So 3 minus 6 is equal to 0. But actually, if you look at 2, remember we told that 1,51,144 is not owned by the government. It is borrowed from him by someone, right? So he has to give that back. So the liability of the government, so the net the government has a fiscal deficit because this 1,51,144, the government has spent or is choosing to spend more than what it has actually received in its own money. Yes, Anantaraman, we can of course explain the total expenditure again. Total expenditure means revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure. Just add both of them, right? And then what happens? 4 plus 5, sorry, I think I've got those numbers wrong there. It's my small mistake that happened. So the revenue expenditure has to be a little more than that. It is not just this much. I think it is a little over. That's 5 lakh something. I have to just add and see. I think it is some mistake I got there. Sorry, right? But eventually your total expenditure has to be 5,14,344. We just want the same money to be there. Correct, Tarun. Yes, yes. The total expenditure number is wrong because your revenue expenditure calculation is gone wrong. Actually, I wanted to create a number such that your revenue, total receipts and total expenditure, when you do it, has to be the same. Right? I made a little bit of mistake there. Sorry. I think the printing error was wrong and the calculation was made earlier and I copied it wrong. Right? Okay, so now if you, like I told you, the budget deficit when the government looks, it is 0. Therefore, the government never looks at the budget deficit because it will somehow borrow money and try to even out its actual deficit. But actually, what is the deficit? Fiscal deficit which the government has is 1,51,144, which it borrowed. So fiscal deficit means what? Fisc means government treasury. So how much short is there in the government treasury is what is meant by fiscal deficit. And that is the amount of money that it borrowed, which is equal to 1,51,144. But budgetary deficit will be including the borrowings. So net effect, when you look at it, nothing is there. So government says, you know what, we have spent the same and they have earned the same. So it's equal to 0. So the balance sheet looks good for the government, but we know what's the reality. Therefore, the government said that I will not look at budget deficit. I will start looking at the fiscal deficit to see how much the government is actually short of. Right? Are we clear of this, guys? So this is what the fiscal deficit is, and this fiscal deficit is a 3.3. 3.4 is ceiling. They said they would touch. 3.3 they said they would be there, but they did not actually do it. 3.2 is what they wanted to do. 2.8 to 3.2 is what they wanted to achieve, but they could just not achieve it. 2.8 is the lower level they want to achieve. So I think with this you have a clarity on how the budget works, what are the specific things in the budget, right? And what are the heads that are there. Please understand, once the budget is discussed, an appropriation bill is passed, and the appropriation bill tells or permits the government to take this money out of the Consolidated Fund of India. Right? There are three types of funds, guys. One is called as the public accounts. The second is called as the Consolidated Fund of India. And the third is called as the Contingency Fund of India. Right? Okay, Shaktivel, I'll quickly take your answer. Where will the government borrow from the World Bank? Okay, so please understand this, guys. Please understand this. And this is why I would really love for you to take my economic session also. World Bank does not give you loan. World Bank only gives you money for projects. It is the IMF which gives you loan. International Monetary Fund. Right? So first thing the government will do is it is not going to go and ask the World Bank or the IMF. What it will do is it will ask your banks itself. It will ask SBI, it will ask your Punjab National Bank. I don't know if they can ask after all these scams have happened. But yeah, it will ask these banks, and if they can't get from the banks, then they will start taking money from the deposits that you have put in the post office funds and all that, and they will try to even out this deficit. As a borrowing, they will take it. Now, Satyanarayan, yes, yes, Diptarka, I'll explain the funds also. Tarun, I will go to Arvind's, I'll go to Satyanarayan's question. Revenue expenditure relevant to a country. Okay, a revenue expenditure relevant to a country is subsidy. When the government gives you subsidy, it is not actually earning any or making any asset, right? When the government pays for the car and the house rent of IAS officers, it is not making any asset because of that, right? It is just an intangible asset that they are creating, and therefore that constitutes your revenue expenditure. The different types of funds are, listen once again, public accounts, Consolidated Fund of India, and Contingency Fund of India. Public accounts means it is the accounts of the public, meaning it will include what all money, the money that people put in terms of National Pension Scheme, EPF, PPF, the people, whatever they put in the postal office, all these deposits, what is put by the people, it's called as the public accounts fund, right? So whenever the government takes money from that, it will be the last option for the government, and it will also be a borrowing. It is not the government's own money. Right? The next thing is the Consolidated Fund of India. Consolidated Fund of India is government's own money. The money it earns from taxes, the money it earns from interest, the money it earns from service charges, the money it earns from licenses, all these things. That is like your own wallet. You can take that money and spend because it's your own thing. Ashwin, see, Abhinav, what happens is a unity statue, you should understand, is not just made like that. It's an asset which attracts a lot of tourists. So to go and visit that place, maybe you may have to pay some money. It generates employment. So the government, while making such kinds of assets, also if it is able to earn some amount of money, and because they have created something tangible, it is a capital expenditure, right? They have created something as a tangible asset. Are you able to understand, guys? Any more doubts? Any of you have any more doubts regarding the budget? If there is anything more, guys, we can always do a one more session, another one more hour. We just did one hour 10 minutes. We can do one more organized session. If you have any doubts on anything in economics, you can ask me, especially the Indian economics. After this, the next session that we plan to take is on the Indian Constitution and what is happening around it in the recent times, the news that is happening. Oh yes, the contingency fund, Anandaraman, is the government keeps away a certain amount of money in case some sort of emergency happens. So the government, in case of natural calamity, war or anything, it will introduce something called as a contingency fund and keep it always ready, just in case it requires. Right? So that will be about a certain amount, 50,000 crores, something is already put in as a contingency fund just in case some wrong event happens. It can be natural or man-made calamity. Right, guys, I think that settles it. How does it collect that money? It doesn't collect that money. The money is divided from the consolidated fund. A part of the consolidated fund is allocated to go into the contingency fund. It doesn't collect from us or anything. Don't worry. The government is not going to tell you, you know what, I'm going to keep a box in every shop and you please fill that and I'll collect that box and I'll include in the contingency fund. IMF members can pull out money easily? No. IMF members have something called as a standard drawing facility, SDF, or standard drawing rights called as SDR. What happens is you have to deposit, all member countries have to deposit a certain amount of money in the IMF. And when IMF is asked for the money, IMF will give you that money provided you then listen to their principles. Even in the case of liberalization, privatization, and globalization, even though Manmohan Singh implemented it, the IMF had said that if you want us to give you money and pull you out of the BOP crisis, then what you should do, then you should listen to whatever we tell you. If your economy is closed, then you have to open it up. If your economy is too open for everyone, then it should be closed up and conservative a little. So this is decided by the IMF. Anantharaman, personal views on the budget, it's very skewed towards the election because there's not too much of details. The last time there was a lot more influence and a lot more emphasis given on a lot of sectors. Right, this time because they have not mentioned all the highlights yet, and they're saying that whatever we bring into place will come into effect only if we get re-elected. So whatever little that they have put forward is very difficult to comment when you have seen only a little bit of the picture. As far as the salaried employee is concerned, I feel a couple of people might get some sort of a rebate, but getting 13,000 rupees relief, how does it matter anyways, right? So 30,000 rupees divided by 12 is about 1,000 rupees a month. I am not saying I'm too rich to avoid 1,000 rupees, but net effect on your salary becomes not too much. However, like I said, the amount of investment otherwise that you have to put to save this money and bring it to 5 lakhs is going to lose. I'm a person, I'm very, very capitalistic in nature, so I would always believe in investing that money and earning that interest, or earning that kind of dividend somewhere else, and making sure I can offset that tax. So I don't believe in the very conservative approach. Right? Pujta, yes. Narega, basically, it's the MNRAJ is basically Mahatma Gandhi National Employment Guarantee Scheme. So what's going to happen is that more of your daily wage employees will be given some amount of minimal money so that they can, do some government work, which will make that which will cause for a lot of your daily wage earners like your sweepers, maids, your carpenters and other workers who are dependent, they will also start availing this facility. Therefore, a possible problem that can happen is that these facilities, now that you're probably paying 200, 300 rupees for, you might not find more of these people because the government itself is funding them. Therefore, you may have to spend maybe about 600, 700 rupees on these people. I'm just saying, just in case these guys are eligible for that, because now that the government gives them a minimum income, they'll always want to get more than that. The Targa, yes, contingency fund is used during emergency. Now, emergency also, I can't call it emergency because emergency has a different meaning in the Indian constitution, right? I would say in case of a natural or a man-made calamity is where I would use the funds from contingency. Well, universal basic income being given to people will ensure unemployment as long as the people of a country decide that, what, I'm happy with little I'm getting from the government, I don't want to work. Yes, it will breed unemployment, but the whole thing is unemployment is a reason why government has to at least give the money, because of being unemployed, these people don't have any sort of source of income. So if employment can be generated for these people at a particular amount of money being given to them, then the government will remove the scheme. But the whole purpose of it is because people are not able to earn so much and nobody will work for free or less money, yes? So yeah, so this is how it will be, right? Let me know if there are anything else. Like I said, collect your questions and I'll talk to Ajay, and if we have to do one more session because a lot of questions and answering them one by one would not make sense. Putting them into an actual class would make a lot of sense. So let me know if there's any facet of the Indian economy you would want to discuss. Just type in it in the group. I am also there in the group and I've been watching your chats as well. Before you go for your interviews, anything related to Indian constitution, economics. Also, I am a product manager. I head digital marketing for a particular company. So any sort of idea, understanding of digital marketing, or if there's anything that you think you want to go and speak in an interview, please let me know and we can discuss it. Majorly we will discuss here is economics and Indian constitution as classes, one after the other. Right, so Diptarka, all of you guys, let's do one thing. Let's put these questions on the group, or maybe you guys can send it to me on my chat. I'm there on the WhatsApp. Right, sending it here, it might be difficult to collate it. Once it is collated, we can do one more session. I'll ask Ajay to arrange one more session if that is okay with you guys. Right, so you can see it on a slide and you can learn specifically instead of having heard from me and then not understood it properly. Alright guys, like I said, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your attention. And if you have any doubts, like I told you before your interviews, normally I would have been in Tambaram doing end-to-end interviews and sessions on economics. But this year, I thought I would do it 3 years at a stretch, but 2 years in a stretch is all I have done. And it would be great next time if I can meet you guys, probably one of these days. And Tamil is a great place because Ajay is such an inspiration in terms of the classes being taken. So please don't miss out this opportunity and make the best out of it. Right? We possibly try to do a session on art of storytelling, which is generally done for business managers and for product leaders. But it kind of helps you to do your interview better. What do you mean by art of storytelling? We will discuss it later. But these sessions, if it can be attended by all of you guys, it's very easy to arrange it because I can be in Bangalore and still take these sessions for you. Absolutely, Abbas. The slide will be shared. It will be an open Google slide. Take a look at it and read it. And if there's any doubt, please get back to me. Thank you so much for your time. We will closing it now. So I will see you guys. Thank you and have a good night.